we kind of feel like we can't get a break. And we feel like if the pandemic is not killing us, then cops are. They gotta go!
Kay has been marching through the streets of New York protesting police brutality, shoulder to shoulder with thousands of others.
We're supposed to still be practicing social distancing, but I believe it's for a cause bigger than myself. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. It's a no-brainer for me.
Protesters across the world are feeling the same drive. After months of lockdown, they are back on the streets, despite a deadly pandemic in the backdrop. We followed protesters across 3 regions. In the US, where citizens are fighting against systemic racism. Lebanon, where they are demanding basic rights and an end to government corruption. And Hong Kong, where they are standing up for democracy and freedom of speech. But as the protests gain momentum, medical experts warn that they could lead to an explosion of secondary infections.
New York 2-3 weeks ago, before protesting, the streets were empty. No one was outside. Everyone was home. We were all just waiting to see when the city would reopen. We were all restless. We were all wanting to know what was going to come next, what life was going to look like after the pandemic. And now we have this. 2020 just keeps topping us.
Since May, tens of thousands of Americans have been protesting police brutality and racial injustice.
Water?
Kay is doing her part by distributing free snacks, water, and masks for protesters in New York.
We got granola bars too. People are not sure how they're gonna live after, this pandemic is over. Everything is so uncertain. So if you can imagine that energy, and then you have to turn around and worry about dying when you leave your home for the first time. I have brothers. Every time they leave home, I'm fearful of their lives.
Sparked by the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, the protests are a stark contrast to the social distancing rules of the last few months, especially in New York City, which had a strict lockdown and the highest coronavirus death toll in the country.
We're still in the middle of a very deadly pandemic, one that is disproportionately impacting people of color, one that is disproportionately killing African Americans.
In fact, more than twice as many Black Americans have been dying of the virus than whites.
As a public health professional and then as a Black woman, I'm very, very concerned. This moment, this intersection of COVID and protests is actually my worst nightmare.
We're on a terror! We're on a terror!
On one hand, COVID-19 is a great threat, an imminent threat to my life and to the life of many others in my community, but so is racism. And racism has been a threat to my life and to the lives of those in my community and my ancestors for 401 years, to be precise.
The main demand here is a change of the system. Everyone are demanding basic rights. What we're demanding is not instantaneous radical change.
In October, 1 million people took to the streets across Lebanon to protest against an inefficient government and to demand access to food, healthcare, and education. Months later, when the coronavirus pandemic hit, the situation spiraled out of control.
After the October 17th revolution, I became a part-time activist. During the coronavirus, that turned into full-time, I guess.
Hussein is part of a group of protesters who are not just marching in the streets, but are also helping fellow citizens.
We decided that if we're really going to change this country, we needed to take it up a notch. We needed to become much more organized.
Our government is not helping its people, so we must step in now. We must help our own people, and that's why we took this step. We started this movement from the food boxes or Baytna Baytak, where we are distributing masks for the poor people to be safe as well.
Using donations, the Mintashrin group manufactured masks locally in the color of the revolution.
people from every single category in society, from every single class. You see the elite next to the less fortunate people from the periphery of the capital. You can see all these people together for the first time.
The Lebanese economy has been declining sharply since August of last year, and almost half the population is now unemployed.
So Lebanon is in the midst of an economic collapse, and nothing has been done yet at the level of government to stop the collapse. If you add this slowdown in the economy to the financial crisis and the banking crisis we're facing, we have here the ingredient of a social explosion.
The democratic process is the way, but we should also be very careful that when people go hungry, when people are not feeding their children, people will not be rational anymore.
In Hong Kong, masks don't only protect protesters from coronavirus, they protect them from tear gas and shield their identities. They have been wearing them since they first hit the streets in March last year. Hong Kong was largely quiet during the lockdown, but the passing of a new national security law fueled a new spark of protests in May. Boo has already been arrested twice and is using an alias to stay anonymous. For him, the fear of mainland China's tightening grip is far greater than the fear of COVID-19.
通過咗個國安法已經一切手段咁要收返香港，係啊，咁其實佢即係我哋失去咗嘅係咩？我哋失去咗其實係我哋香港自己嗰個民主自由啊，係啊，咁香港本身佢有呢個國際地位，係因為佢呢個城市嘅自由咯。即係佢可能我每講一句嘢，其實我唔需要擔心嘅，但係可能依家因為一國一制之下，我可能講一句嘢，可能會變咗有顛覆嘅家長。
After the national security law was passed on May 29, thousands defied a ban on the annual vigil in Tiananmen Square, gathering with candles in Hong Kong's Victoria Park. But there was also a stark decrease in the number of people protesting to protect their civil liberties.
即係其實而家越落嚟嘅時候，個發展落到嚟嘅時候咧，唔係單止疫情影響到，連好多人個心態上都會覺得就係話出嚟會俾人拉，或者係會俾人哋攔捕嘅時候，都已經係會有個心態就係驚咗，跟住唔係好夠膽走出嚟。一開始一把火出嚟嘅時候，但係個疫情將把火冚熄咗嘅時候，會影響咗佢哋出嚟嘅意欲。
I can't breathe! The fire is roaring for hundreds of thousands around the world, with no end in sight. And the effect of global protests on the spread of coronavirus is yet to be seen.
I am concerned. There has been a rush in the US specifically to move back to normalcy so quickly. And I think we have been watching kind of the whole world go through this at the same time, which is really unprecedented. I'm very concerned that this will come back with a vengeance. It's not gone, it's still around, it's still spreading.